Hello and welcome back to another lesson as part of my free Learn to Draw course on YouTube. We are up to lesson 6 now. So if you've just chanced upon this video, you might want to go back to lesson 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 and jump in there depending on what your level is. So far we've been drawing objects that have defined shapes that fit one of our three-dimensional shapes that we've been using. We've been using cubes, cylinders, domes and cones. But what happens when you have an object that doesn't fit into any of those shapes? How do you approach it? That's what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to be looking at edge quality and line quality. When we can't simplify it down into a basic shape, we can look for straight lines first of all, angles, but beyond that we can focus in on the edges and we can learn how to see those clearly and accurately record the edge of what we're drawing. And the edge doesn't necessarily mean just the outline, it might be edges that go through the object as well. Contour is another way to talk about edge. You might have seen my videos on contour drawing and continuous line drawing. We're going to start with something similar today. So some of the objects in question could be things like plants, maybe clothing, especially like clothing or fabric that is wrinkled. There's not really any easy way to simplify that down. We've just got to look and we've got to record what we see. Let's talk a little bit about what line quality is first. And if you grab a pencil, maybe a 2B pencil, one that you can go light and dark, and grab your sketchbook, and we'll just do a couple of exercises. So line quality is how thick or thin or dark or light or soft or hard the line that you draw is. And some of you might have done my exercise where we do valleys and hills. Let's just do that now anyway. We come down and then up and down and up, but as you come down you're going to push hard, and then as you come up you're going to lighten up. Push hard and then come up and lessen the pressure and get a lighter line. So right there we've got two different types of line. We've got, well, we can describe it in a few ways. We've got a dark line, light line. This one is a little bit thicker because I was pushing harder and it's a soft pencil, so we've got a thick line and a thin line. And if I keep going, you maybe see here this line gets a bit softer too because of the type of pencil that I'm using. So we need to figure out how we can intentionally create these different types of lines. That's one way. Another way we can create variation in an edge that we're drawing is think about having a broken line and then a solid line. So this, apart from actually being a lighter line, it appears lighter. It's as if there's some light reflecting off the edge, and then it can get darker. So we can try that again. We could start dark and then we could just sort of break the line up and then go dark. We can have hard edges, so let's just draw some lines that are very hard. I'm using more of the tip of my pencil. It can be a light hard line as well, but working with the tip of the pencil rather than the side of the pencil. If we want to soften off one of these lines, we can use the side of the pencil and just shade over top of it. A good example of this would be if you've ever drawn eyes, had a go at drawing eyes, the crease of the upper eyelid is very, very soft. It looks dark. It looks like a hard dark line like this. But it's actually very soft, almost like a shaded line, and it blends into the spaces on either side. So that's one way of creating a soft edge, is just shading over top of it. We can do the same thing, without drawing the hard line first. We can just create a shaded line. Maybe have it go from dark to light. So these are soft lines, soft edges. If we want to bring that into a harder edge, it could be a thin line like that, or if you want to keep it going and keep it thick, you're just going to be using the point of your pencil. So you can see the difference between an edge that is hard and an edge that is very soft. So we've got light, dark, we've got hard, soft, we've got thick and thin. There might be other ways that you can think of to describe different edges. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a continuous line exercise. You might have done this before, but it's a really good way of focusing in on the edges and of seeing detail really clearly. Once we've done a continuous line drawing of our subject, which is going to be a plant, and then we're going to have a go at drawing it a little bit more realistically, but we're going to bring that exercise into it, or bring that technique of continuous line drawing into our final drawing. So this is the photo we're going to be using. I might just turn my page around here. We'll zoom in a little bit on that leaf. So continuous line drawing, we are going to be putting our pencil to paper. We're going to move our pencil as we look. Just a little practice one, and if you watch my eyes, I'll start looking at the page, but then I'm moving my pencil as I look at the subject. And I might just flick back to my page just every now and again, especially where you might be changing direction. But I'm trying to move my hand at the same time as I'm looking. So my eye is following around the edge and my pencil is trying to draw that exact same line that my eye is following. So I'll go ahead and do a continuous line drawing. You might want to watch for a bit first, just get the feel of it, and then maybe pause the video and have a go from the photograph on screen yourself. Now, we're not measuring proportion in this one. It's really just a seeing exercise. So you might find that it's out of proportion. Luckily, we're drawing a plant. It doesn't matter too much if it's a little bit out of proportion. And like I said, this is just an exercise in seeing. So what we're looking for is any tiny little change in the edge. So even this part that I'm coming across now, I'm just going over my drawing that I started before, but there's a few little sort of dips in that edge. And then we start to come around, and you might be tempted to just sort of draw a big curve around here, but I want you to really follow your eye around the edge. Remember, keep looking, trying to draw as you look, and my pencil's not leaving the page. So then it starts to straighten out a little bit, and then it's going to come back in around here. So again, you might feel like just drawing that, but I want you to really look closely at that edge. It might not be the same as it first appears. It's a little bit tricky to talk and do this at the same time. We'll give it a go, and then we're going to come around here. If you're feeling okay with this, I mean, you can speed up a little bit, but it means you're going to be flicking your eye back and forth a lot faster, and you want to keep looking. So just because you're speeding up doesn't mean you're skipping anything. If you can see that you've gone in the wrong direction, like here, you just come back to the point where you need to correct it and just draw over top. So there's no rubbing out for this exercise. Little point there. And we're not dealing with proportion, but as I come up here, I'm kind of thinking about the fact that it sort of lines up with this one. That can just help guide where my line goes up to. Same with this one coming down here. You look at the negative spaces in between. So it's inevitable that you're going to get a bit of wobbliness here and there because you were keeping just one line going all the time. It's really good for your control, practicing control of your pencil as well. But the main focus of this drawing is how you are looking at your subject, how you're looking at the edge, the contour. Are you looking closely enough, or are you just skipping ahead? Are you making assumptions? Which is very easy to do because we think we know things about some of the objects that we draw, and actually they can be quite different than what we think. We just need to look closely. If your pencil comes off the page a little bit, it doesn't matter, but try to keep it moving along that page. So we're not sketching. All our other lessons we've been working like this. This is a very different way of working, and in a moment we're going to bring the two methods together. We'll do a bit of sketching and then we'll do a bit of this contour drawing. We could bring this line here out too. Again, it looks kind of straight, but I'm really looking for any changes. I might just knit back to here. Always looking at your subject. And then we've also got the contours that come through the subject. Now, if things are going wonky, you know, your edges or your contours inside the subject might not line up, but still have a go at drawing them. It's this line that comes down here. This is a good example of what we know. We know these veins come down each one of these, but we don't want to just draw a generic line. We want to really think about where it starts, the path that it takes, and then where it ends. So again here, where does it start? What path does it take? Follow it, follow your eye along as you draw. And then where does it end? So now would be a good time, if you've just been watching this, to pause the video and actually give it a go before we move on to the next exercise. When we look at this drawing, you can see that the line quality or the edge quality is all the same. So it's all a heavy, dark, sharp edge. And if you look at the photograph, even though it doesn't have an outline, if you look at the edges, there's some that, when you look closely, are a bit lighter, maybe up around here. There's some that are a bit darker, and this one here is quite soft as well. It's got a bit of shadow on it. It comes around here. And that's what we're going to bring into our next drawing. And we're going to do the same drawing, but this time we're going to plan our drawing a little bit. So this is the way you might go about incorporating that technique that we've just done, contour drawing, into a sketch. So you're drawing something, doesn't quite fit to those three-dimensional shapes we've discussed in other lessons. You need to switch into that contour drawing line mode of looking, see the edges, and bring that into your drawing. But we can give ourselves some guidelines to start with. So even though this doesn't fit into a particular shape, we can see that there's kind of that center stem, and we can follow the curve of that. It's going to determine how big our drawing is. So there's the top and there's the bottom. And then we can think about maybe where the points of each of these parts of the leaf come out to. Maybe before that we could just look at some angles. There's that angle. You could even just very quickly draw around if you want to. There's this angle here. That's the bottom of that part of the leaf. And then the next part also follows the same kind of angle. And then we can find where this curve occurs. And then there's this angle here as well. So that shape there is quite different to this shape. I'll draw it a bit darker so you can see it, but keep yours really light. This is just a plan. Then we've got the angle that this leaf comes out at. Maybe a bit more like that actually. Look at the triangle negative space. We haven't talked much about negative space. It could be a lesson on its own, but I think hopefully you understand what I mean when I'm talking about the negative space, the spaces between things. If you focus on those, that can help you see more clearly as well. And we've kind of got angle comes down here. This curve occurs in between this one and this one. Think about the angles. Again, if this isn't completely accurate, it's a plant. No one's going to know. We want to aim for accuracy, but you know, any practice is good practice. So I've mostly just used angles here, using quite straight lines, even though this is an organic subject, to try and figure out where each of these parts of the leaf are going to go before I bring in my really nice organic contour line. Just take a look at your drawing, think about the proportions, think about where things line up. So when I look at mine, I've got this point of this part of the leaf here. If I draw a straight line across, This leaf here I've got down way low, and I felt like it was too big anyway. So this probably comes about here. Almost straight up and down there. We could think about now where it lines up with. We could look at where this one might line up. And this one should come lower down as well. Or maybe this needs to go higher up. So even though it's pretty hard to measure the proportions of this in terms of height versus width, because it changes all the time, we could use those straight lines, vertical or horizontal, to just see what lines up. What's another one we could use? We can maybe draw a line straight up from here and just see where it intersects this leaf. Okay, it's not too bad, not perfect, but we've got to move on at some point. So once you're reasonably happy with this, we can get rid of all these lines that we don't need. So once you've done your basic sketch, your foundation sketch, and you've rubbed out all these lines that you don't need, then you're going to switch into that contour drawing mode, looking really closely at the edge and looking again at the photograph. Now I have to apologize because my video cut out, so I have actually done the right side of this already, but I'm going to take you through it again. So start here, and we've got our plan already down there, but I want you to follow your eye along the edge and move your pencil along the edge at the same time. And if your plan isn't what you see in your photo, then you need to change where that edge goes. And try to keep this still quite light, because we are going to play around with the line quality and the edge quality soon. So I'm still using a dark pencil so you can see it, but maybe an HB pencil, but just using light pressure if you can, and trying to correct that edge and give it those unique details. We're looking for the things that make our drawing a drawing of this particular leaf, not any other leaf. So as we come down here, there's a few little bumps. Might be able to go a little bit faster than the exercise, but just make sure you're still looking at the photograph. Might mean you're looking back and forward a little bit faster. And this is my second time around this side, and I can already see something that's not quite right down here. So I'm going to redraw that. So moving along the edge, looking, adding in any little bumps. Making any changes that you need to make. So this is about where I got up to before my video cut out, so I'm going to pay quite a lot of attention to this part. And I'm following my plan because I was pretty happy with the plan, but I am not sticking to the straight line, so I'm bringing in variations, finding where that line curves or dips a little bit, looking for any of those little bumps, refining these points here and the curves at those points. And hopefully you feel that switch that you make. You're not just looking for general shapes now. You're really focusing in on the edge and trying to see clearly. Not sticking to the drawing that you've got, but refining your drawing, what needs to change. Then we can bring in the centre line, and again I'm going to, you can sketch it in lightly first if you want, but I'm going to just very lightly create a contour line down there, following it with my eye. Maybe some of these other ones as well. Just keep these very, very light. So we're going to bring in a little bit of shading, and then once we've done that, we're going to focus in on the quality of the edges and see if we can bring a bit of variation so it's not just a hard outline. If it's really dark what you've got, just push it back a little bit, especially at the top here, because the light's sort of coming from this direction. I think it's going from above, but it's a little bit more light up the top here. So let's just get rid of some of those slightly darker lines. Don't rub them out, just push them back a little bit. Then we're going to add some shading, and if you were here for the lesson last week, we just used 3 values. And that's all we're going to do this time as well. So the whole leaf is green. It's quite a dark colour. So I'm going to shade in the whole thing. You could follow the direction of the leaves if you want, or you could just go straight up and down the way we did in our lesson on shading. I think I might do that. It's a little bit easier to just go straight up and down. Could be single lines just going down, 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 or up, 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 or you might be going back and forth. I'm shading in the whole thing. And I'm not going to go quite as dark as it actually is. If you squint, you'll see just how dark green is against the white background. It's a very, very dark grey if we were to convert the photograph into black and white. But we're just giving a little bit of shading, create a little bit of form with the values. So there's the middle value. Now if you have some tissue, you could just give that a little bit of a smudge, not too much, just a sketch. You don't need to do that. Actually, let's bring a little bit of shading along here too. And then we're just going to pick out some of the slightly darker areas. So it's a bit darker here. Darker here. So we might only actually have 2 values in this one. It's a little bit lighter around there, and maybe we could just bring out a little bit of a highlight with our eraser. So that would be our 3rd value. Anywhere where it looks just a little bit darker, you need to bring in just 1 more value. And I know there's actually quite a lot of information in there when you're looking at it. It might be hard to decide where to go darker, but if you squint, you might be able to see that it's a bit lighter around here, it's lighter around here, maybe down the bottom here is a little bit lighter. It's a bit darker just here. So you are always able to make decisions about how much shading you do and how you simplify the shading or the shape. And I'm probably just going to keep it about like that. And I'm going to bring the vein of this leaf down in. I'm going to create a nice soft shaded line. So already we're thinking about line quality in this one as well. And this one here can be just a nice soft line too. And then we've got the stem here. Just a bit of shading on that. Okay, so now is the point where we're going to bring in some of our edge quality. And think about the type of edge that we're looking at, and we're going to make some decisions. So if you can't clearly see what type of edge it is, then I'll give you a few rules that you can follow, where you can still add some line quality. You might not be able to see it clearly, but you're giving your drawing a little bit more interest. So usually the top of an object is lighter, and in this photo the light's sort of coming down on the leaf, maybe from the top right corner of the photograph, but also down from above, so it's hitting the surface of the leaf. But even if it was just coming straight down, we can kind of create a bit of depth in our photograph by thinking about the top, or a bit of depth in our drawing by thinking about the top edges as being lighter, the bottom edges as being darker, just because usually when you're looking at things, the light is coming from above, the top is lighter, the bottom is darker. It's sort of a general rule you can follow if you like. So we could darken up this edge a little bit, but keeping it really nice and soft. And if you look at the photograph, you can also see that it sort of folds under just a little bit. So we could even just blend that out a bit. Make sure you're still keeping those contour lines, you're not losing the detail of that edge. There's also in here, you can see in the photograph, there's a dark edge there. It's not sharp, it's soft, so we go quite dark. It lightens up as you come down this part. So we go dark and then we can just fade it out a little bit or soften it off by shading over top. Same with this edge. Have a look at this edge along here. As you come down here, it gets a little bit darker. There's not really an outline, so technically, you know, this outline here should just disappear into the shading. But don't worry too much about that right now. We're just playing around with edge quality and line quality. So again, it's quite soft. Can you see how just adding these dark points is starting to give this drawing a bit of depth, or a bit more depth beyond just what we did with the shading? So have a look, see if there's anywhere else you can add some darker lines, lighter lines. Up here, that looks like quite a light area, and I could actually take away the edge and keep it as a very light line, maybe a very sharp line. And then it becomes a little bit thicker as we come down here. And then a bit darker here. And light, and then a bit darker here as well. So they're very subtle things. Like I said, if you can't see a change in the quality of the edge, whether it's dark or light or hard or soft, then think about having the lower parts of each part of the leaf a little bit darker. So along here, it's quite a sharp edge there as well. And under here, and under here. Dark, but it blends into the rest of the shading. If we look closely here, there's actually a very, very light edge, and if you had a putty eraser or one of these mono zero erasers, might be where you could just bring in a light edge. It's darker in here. You see, just in there, it's a bit darker. So go back and look at the photograph again and look for values. If you need to add any more values, add it in a bit more here and here. Look at the edges again and see if there's anything that stands out to you. What's different about one edge compared to another edge? So this one here is nice and soft and dark, compared with at the top here where it's quite light. Just get a bit darker around this side underneath that light edge. But yeah, the more you look, the more you're going to see, and that's always the way with drawing. Keep it simple. The main focus of this is to create some variation in our edges and to become aware that, you know, that edge quality and getting that in your drawing makes a big difference. So you can see a big difference between this drawing here and this one here. I mean, even though this was just an outline exercise, it doesn't have any shading. You can see that the edges in this one do make a difference, whether they're dark or light, or, you know, soft or sharp. I hope you found this lesson useful and that you can start looking at your drawings and maybe bringing a little bit more to the edges and to the lines that you're using. Really thinking about the quality of them. Are they dark, light, hard, soft, crisp, thin, thick, whatever? It can make a really big difference to your drawing. Your practice for this week is to find something organic. It could just be a leaf that you find on the street, or it could be something out of your garden if you've got a garden, or maybe just one leaf on a pot plant. And have a go at drawing that the same way we've done this. Do a continuous line drawing first, so it's a really good way to get your eye used to the subject, to learn about it, and then have a go at planning out your drawing a little bit more carefully, using straight lines, a little bit of those proportional techniques and angles that we've done in the previous video, and then bring in a little bit of shading, like another previous video, just 2 or 3 values for now, and then really focus on the edge quality, creating lines with your pencil that describe the quality of those edges. Thanks very much for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next video. We'll probably do a little bit more shading coming up, unless I think of something else that we need to fit in before shading. If you've got any ideas of what you think is important to you when you're learning to draw and you'd like me to incorporate it into a video, one of these Learn to Draw classes, then please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.